We're Eternals. We came here 7,000 years ago to protect humans from the deviants.
Why didn't you guys help fight Thanos? Or any war, all the other terrible things throughout history?
We were instructed not to interfere in any human conflicts unless deviants are involved.
By who?
Welcome back, everyone. This will be my new Eternals trailer video. They just released a new IMAX trailer that's a little bit different than the last one, so there's a bunch of Easter eggs, and I figured it's a good opportunity to talk about the new Marvel cosmic hierarchy and explain the Celestials and where everybody fits in now. Because as you've seen from the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer, it is getting so crazy in Marvel Phase 4. So if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. The Eternals movie is coming up next month, so we're going to start seeing a whole bunch more footage for it really soon too. And I will explain where Kang in the Multiverse War figures into all this, like He Who Remains. Because obviously on the Loki series, we saw that he'd been controlling the main MCU timeline, the sacred timeline, from start to finish the whole time. So he would have been watching over the birth of eternity, the Celestials, the Eternals, everything that played out from the start of the timeline to the very end of time. But there is still a hierarchy of cosmic beings in the MCU that are way more powerful than anything we've seen before. So the Eternals movie is really just the introduction to some of those cosmic beings. It's not meant to be a one and done with the Celestial hosts. They're way too powerful for that. But the movie's also meant to tell the true origin of the Celestials and the actual origin of the universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in a more traditional way than the sacred timeline that Kang gave us, which represents the main MCU universe we've been operating in throughout all the Marvel movies so far. So when He Who Remains Kang was telling us his backstory, he was kind of giving us a backstory on the universe, and during the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, The Collector kind of gave us a backstory on the universe, but it's really only part of the story. The Eternals movie is going to fill in all those gaps. What He Who Remains Kang on Loki started to explain, though, was the cycle of Big Bangs. Like, this is not the first version of the universe that you're living in. It's a loop. It operates on a loop. Universe is born in the Big Bang, eventually dies heat death, then is reborn in a new version of the universe. So in the MCU, we don't know which version of the universe we're in, we just know that it's been through a couple of cycles already. But before the Big Bang, there was something. It was basically called utter chaos, the void, where the Dark Elves were born, where beings like Shumagorth ruled over Chaos Lords. But when the first Big Bang happens and the first universe is born, it has a consciousness. It's called eternity, so the universe itself is alive.
Eternity.
Eventually, that universe winds up dying its heat death, then contracts again, goes through another Big Bang cycle, becoming the second version of the universe. The only thing that He Who Remains Kang did to mess with this process, the cycle of Big Bangs, the birth and rebirth of the universe, is that he only changes things so that everything will play out the same, or close to the same, in every single time loop, start to finish. Where you get to the multiverse of it all is that during the second Big Bang, that's when the multiverse was born. There's still just one version of eternity, one consciousness for it all, though. Also during the second Big Bang is when the Infinity Stones are created. When the Collector was explaining them to the Guardians of the Galaxy, he said before the Big Bang there were 6 singularities that survived the Big Bang process and then were forged into ingots, actual Infinity Stones. That story is only half the story. The 6 singularities were the remnants of the former version of the universe. They represent all the cosmic power of that entire universe distilled down into 6 singularities. So when you're wielding the Infinity Stones, you're wielding the cosmic power of an entire universe. That's why you're able to affect things on a universe-wide scale. When I say Galactus was also created the same way the Infinity Stones were created, he started out as a scientist named Galen who just survived the heat death of his own universe in the next Big Bang, and during that Big Bang process, he was imbued with immense cosmic energy, changing him into Galactus. Galactus is similar to the Celestials in some ways, but the reason Eternity created him was to destroy dying worlds so that new life could grow inside the cosmos. Like when farmers do controlled burns on their fields to help enrich the soil, but on a cosmic scale. So just like the Celestials, Galactus isn't really good or evil, only the worlds he consumes think of him as a villain. But he serves a very important cosmic purpose. But also starting in this second Big Bang and then future Big Bangs that would eventually happen, in each of the different universes, Eternity winds up creating the first celestial host, the ones that we see walking around in all the Marvel trailers. In the MCU, they're led by Arishem the Judge, this giant red celestial, who they're calling the Prime Celestial. All the Celestials have kind of funny names that describe what they do. The first Celestial host was Arishem the Judge. Obviously, it's in the name. He judges things. Jemiah the Calculator, who's also Nowhere, the head of the dead Celestial in present day. I'll explain that in a second, too, because you can kill Celestials, but it's really, really hard. There's Nazar the Calculator, Hargan the Measurer, Eson the Searcher, who we also saw during the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and then also Ego the Living Planet, because he was a Celestial inside the MCU. But he's kind of like a rogue Celestial, so even though Eternity gives birth to these new Celestials and tells them to go out and garden, experiment with life in the universe. If you're a fan of the Berserk manga, they're kind of like the God Hand. They're not good, they're not evil, just go out and do as thou willst. Try experimenting with things. Ego the Living Planet is different because he's a rogue Celestial, so even though it might seem like Eternity is telling the Celestials what to do, it's actually not quite like that. It just creates them and then just lets them go out and do whatever it is that they feel like doing. Imagine the world's worst absentee parent. So Ego the Living Planet doesn't feel like being part of the Celestial host. They don't force him to be part of the Celestial host. But when Eternity creates the Celestials, it imbues them with immense cosmic power. And just to give you an idea for how much cosmic power they wield, you could probably slow one down temporarily, just for like a hot second with one Infinity Stone, but you need the entire Infinity Gauntlet to actually have a chance at stopping one. They use vibranium to form a lot of their actual bodies, like the physical bodies that they walk around in. So a lot of people theorize that the vibranium mound in Wakanda was actually sent to planet Earth, or they orchestrated things the Celestials did so that that vibranium would be used in the creation of the brand new Celestial that's growing in planet Earth. The best sense for scale that I could give you would be some of these comic book panels here, with them just towering over everything. So really only beings like Galactus have a chance of actually fighting Celestials without a huge power-up. If you're a big comic book fan, Iron Man actually wore the God Killer armor. That was actually an Iron Man suit that was essentially a Celestial Iron Man suit created by some dark versions of the Celestials called the Aspirants. They're not going to be doing that in the movies anytime soon, but it was a really cool comic book twist. The size of the Celestial host fluctuates over time. Like I said, you can kill Celestials, like you did see Nowhere, the head of a dead Celestial during Guardians of the Galaxy in present day. And they can actually reproduce, so to speak, kind of. They can create more Celestials, but it takes millions and millions of years and massive amounts of cosmic energy that you just don't find in present day. So that's why you don't see thousands of Celestials flying around in space. But because there are millions of worlds in the universe for them to experiment on, and there's only a couple Celestials, they create lesser beings to basically delegate a lot of the management to. In the MCU, that actually starts with the deviants that you see, like Crow here. He's one of the antagonists of the film. You see him with Angelina Jolie's Thena character. So the Celestial host sends this Celestial egg to planet Earth to slowly hatch it over millions of years, but it's meant to slowly absorb enough cosmic energy in order to mature, and in order for that to happen, there needs to be life on planet Earth. And at some point in history, the deviants start going around going rogue, ignoring the Celestials' orders, killing off humans everywhere, hurting the chances that this new Celestial will be born. So then the Celestials create the Eternals to go kill the deviants, then take their place shepherding the maturation process of this Celestial egg. So there's this clever trick that they pull with the trailer footage. They make it seem like the Eternals believe that they were sent to planet Earth to shepherd over humanity and watch them grow, like they fall in love with humanity just in general, when really the Celestials don't care about humans at all. They're just a food source, like a cosmic food source for this new Celestial that they're trying to grow. So there's a big change in the way the Eternals are created in the MCU than the comics. In the MCU, they basically create them with Celestial technology to look humanoid, but they're kind of like living Celestial robots, which is part of the reason why they're immortal, eternal, functionally. They're like better Celestial versions of Vision. So they're also kind of soft programmed, like wetware programmed, to obey the Celestials' commands, which is why Cersei is explaining to Dane Whitman's Black Knight character, Kit Harington's character, why they didn't help out fight Thanos during Avengers Infinity War or Avengers Endgame. The main reason is they were kind of programmed to not pay attention to things unless the deviants were threatening the Celestials' true goal of incubating this brand new Celestial. That's the emergence that they're talking about. Like I said, the Celestials can create new Celestials, and that's what they're secretly using Earth for. I think the trailer does a pretty decent job of giving you an idea for the power scaling of the Eternals in the MCU. They're about as powerful as someone like the Hulk or Thor or even Captain Marvel. That's about as powerful as they are in the comics. Like, they're not crazy god-level powerful, like they couldn't attack a Celestial by themselves. And they're kind of programmed to not be able to attack the Celestials. But for those of you wondering, like if Icarus fought Thor, who would win in that fight? It'd be a pretty even match. Most of the Eternals' names are actually named after mythical or biblical figures, because all these religious stories that you read about these great deeds that people performed in ancient history, they're secretly talking about things that the Eternals walked around doing using their powers. So really the actual main villains of the film are the Celestials themselves, even though they themselves aren't really good or evil in the cosmic sense of things. But just in terms of power levels, He Who Remains Kang could have used his quantum energy and control of time to fight the Celestials if he wanted to. But part of the idea of the Eternals movie is that a lot of these characters will come back in future films, and obviously there'll be sequels to the Eternals movie as well, like Eternals 2, Eternals 3, where they'll get into more of the backstory of the MCU, and hopefully see the birth of Thanos. It would be cool to see him being born in one of the sequels, because he is an Eternal just like them. It's just that the group of Eternals that he comes from came from the planet Titan. But if you have any big questions about the Celestials or how the origin of the MCU works or these cosmic beings like Eternity, just write them below in the comments and I'll add them in my future videos. My full Marvel What If Episode 8 video will post Wednesday just like normal. They're having their own version of a giant multiverse crossover. Everyone click here for my Eternals video about Kit Harington's Black Knight character, and click here to learn all about that brand new Spider-Man No Way Home lawsuit that's happening. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.